All right, so Lakeshore and Bathurst have a lot of condominium options. I'm talking about right at the intersection. A lot of addresses you might be familiar with at this intersection are, for example, 38 Iannuzzi, which I've discussed a lot, 600 Fleet. You might see addresses often in Bruyeres, mews. So I'm going to talk about the best and worst condos in this area. Luckily for us, there aren't a lot of awful condos to avoid, but obviously some are better than others. So to first get our bearings, let's just kind of set the foundation for the location. You see that Loblaws there? That is Bathurst. I think that's like the head office for Loblaws in Toronto. And this community is really confined within the intersection of Bathurst and Lakeshore, really at the northwestern corner. So all these towers we're going to discuss are in the northwestern corner of Lakeshore and Bathurst. It's not City Place. It's a little west of City Place, but east of Liberty Village. So you can think of it as bordered by Lakeshore and Bathurst. And then if you want to, further border this stretch of the Gardner Expressway that I'm pointing towards. So without further ado, let's start. Before we get into it though, hello everyone, this is Sam, the Toronto condo connoisseur from SaberiSixRealEstate. No one knows the Toronto condo market as well as I do. So for any buying, selling, leasing inquiries, and a lot of my experience comes from helping buyers, tenants, landlords, sellers in this area, get in touch with me. My link is in the bio. Easier than ever to get in touch. Let's start. So we have 38 Iannuzzi. It's probably the tower I've discussed the most on this channel. I've purchased 3 units in this building. All my clients are quite satisfied. I would rank it as probably one of the best buildings in this vicinity of Lakeshore and Bathurst for these towers. It's a very, very first-time home buyer friendly building in the sense that it has enough excitement, amenities for a lot of young individuals. So as a result, it's also quite tenant friendly as well. So it's not as quiet and residential as some of the best towers across the city, or even some towers we're going to talk about in this video. But at the same time, it has a sufficient enough level of management, competence in terms of taking care of things, and the board is relatively on top of it. The biggest issue you're going to have with this building, like most other buildings, is going to be the elevator wait times. But besides that, and the occasional, party next door, you're not going to have much in terms of problems. I prefer 38 Iannuzzi and its floor plans. It has some really good 1+1s as well, I should have mentioned. Over 20 Bruyeres mews and 50 Bruyeres mews. The Bruyeres mews ones, 20 and 50, and then 15 on this side, are not bad towers by any means. If I had to pick between 50 and 20, I would probably pick 50 over 20. They're a level short of where 38 Iannuzzi stands for me. They have more of the things that I don't like about 38 Iannuzzi and less of the things I like about it. To elaborate as I walk towards 50 Bruyeres mews, by the way, walking backwards is a little bit harder than you think while trying to collect your thoughts and speaking. I hope I don't fall in a ditch. But to elaborate a little bit further, what do I mean? So they're a little bit louder and more rowdy. Elevator wait times are bigger issue across both 50 and 20. Some of the longest elevator wait times I've had in this vicinity for these towers are 50 and 20, but they're really tenant friendly options, meaning they're really good for tenants who are looking to get their feet wet, get in the market. Maybe you're moving out for the first time. I'm really more apt to recommend them to tenants over buyers. But other stuff, like for instance, 20 Bruyeres mews, the hallways are a little bit too outdated already. There seems a little bit too depreciated already. A little bit more wear and tear that I would like. So we're gonna move on to some of the other towers, my favorite towers in this vicinity. But before we do, just a little bit more in terms of breakdown. I really like that this pocket, and truly is like a pocket, has a lot of greenery, has these trees you will see in the B-roll. But there is this constant hum due to the fact that it's really close to Lakeshore, which is a main artery in the city, and of course the Gardner, which is a highway. Now we're gonna go to Grand Magazine. We're gonna mainly here talk about this building. So this building on Grand Magazine is sister buildings with one of my favorite towers in this stretch. We're talking about 38 Grand Magazine. And then on the other side, 35 Bastion. I'll save the best for last. But 38 Grand Magazine, once again, it's quite sufficient and adequate. It's a little bit outdated on the inside. I don't prefer it over 35 Bastion, its sister building, nor do I prefer it over 38 Iannuzzi. Probably is a bit on the quieter side compared to 38 Iannuzzi, but 38 Iannuzzi, to compensate for that, has that fresher, sexier look, and the amenities, the gym in 38 Iannuzzi is probably the best gym in this vicinity. In terms of price per square foot, 38 Grand Magazine, 50 Bruyeres mews, 15 Bruyeres mews, and 20 Bruyeres mews are probably the cheapest in this vicinity. And then you have 38 Iannuzzi, which is a step above. And as we walk past 38 Grand Magazine to talk about 2 more towers that we really need to distinguish between. You'll notice all these little townhome units on the ground amongst all these buildings, whether it's 38 Grand Magazine, 38 Iannuzzi, the Bruyeres mews, all these towers, to make it feel a little bit more residential, have ground floor units with direct access to the street, whether it's Fleet, Bruyeres mews, or Iannuzzi, right? Now, keep in mind, most of these quote-unquote townhouse units are really townhouse in name only. They are essentially condominium units on the ground level. They might have higher ceilings, but really besides that, they don't really feel like townhomes in its true sense. I would not consider them legitimately condo townhouses. And now, a really important part of this video, and I really can't help but to emphasize this. We have to distinguish between the building to my left, which is 628 feet, and the building to my right, which is 600 feet, because there's a tale of two different worlds. 600 feet is often confused with 628 feet, and by association, a lot of people look down on 628 feet. On the contrary, 628 feet, as we'll get to it, is a really great tower. There's a tree here. 600 feet is, in polite terms, not as good as 628. Matter of fact, if I would have to rank probably the worst tower in this vicinity, I would say 600 feet. Now, keep in mind, it's still above a minimum threshold. I would not rank it as one of the worst towers by any means. Just to be clear, if you live in 600 feet, I don't think your building is one of the worst buildings in the city. In contrast, in comparison to its neighboring buildings, though, I would rank it on the lowest tier in this vicinity. It has had a lot of flooding issues. In my opinion, it's just a little too Airbnb heavy. And a lot of units in this building have had a lot of issues with heating, ventilation, and air conditioning that came originally as part of the builder's delivery of the units. So the original furnaces, the original air conditioning units. Flooding issue in this building was quite bad many years ago. I haven't heard any recent reports of any flooding. Frankly, it's just a little bit too trafficked for my building. Constantly people coming and going, a lot of short-term rentals once again. Most likely a lot of people who work in the cash industries, I would probably have to say. And a lot of weird things like 2 bedrooms with only 1 washroom, or which is more of a floor plan complaint. But it's on the positive side, it's quite cheap. It's the cheapest, and the concierge there is pretty decent. At least the guy I deal with usually. In terms of concierges, once again, not to sound like a broken record, but the guy who works mainly full-time at 30 Iannuzzi is really good. He's really helpful with a lot of stuff. One last thing I'll say about 600 feet on the positive side is that out of all the towers in this building, it's probably going to have the best water views. Not probably, I would actually amend that. It definitely has the best water views. If you want to have water views right here at Lakeshore in Bathurst, the most clear and clean water views in this vicinity belongs to units, southern facing units in 600 feet. I've truly saved the best for last. Let's talk about 628 feet and then 35 Bastion, the two most favored buildings of mine in this vicinity, even above, I would say, 38 Iannuzzi, which I'm a huge fan of, as you guys can tell. So here we are on Bastion, and you might ask, what about the Fort York ones, right? There's a lot of these Fort York condos that I've discussed in passing in previous videos, not always in glowing terms, but this is almost a different community. Although it's across the street, like all these towers are a bit different than the ones we're discussing today. So 209 Fort York, 231 Fort York, we'll save for a future video. Okay, so best for last, 35 Bastion. Let's start with that one. Really love the tower. Although it's technically sister buildings with Grand Magazine, and to my understanding, they're one legal condominium corporation. It's just a better building. It's better managed. I'm not sure how to explain it, but you know, the only complaints I've ever had about 35 Bastion, and I've purchased 2 units now in this building. Once again, both clients satisfied. One was a beautiful corner unit, a 2-bedroom plus den with water views, and the other one is a really functional 1+1 that we just recently purchased. The only complaints you could possibly have is that the amenities by today's more modern standards are not these grand, amazing amenities, and they might seem a little bit more outdated, a little bit more dark and dingy, but not even that, you know, it's not as if it's like built in the 70s, right? It's just a really good residential option for a lot of buyers, and much what I will say about this building applies to 628 Fleet. I prefer 35 Bastion over 628 Fleet a little bit more because 35 Bastion, you have all the good qualities I'm talking about, and you have really a community-oriented feeling in the building. That may lack a bit in 628 Fleet, but I'll address that shortly in a second. And really more importantly, on the condo side, on the corporation side, it's a very healthy condo corporation. Of our most recent, I would say 10 purchases for our buyers, This probably ranks as the #1 or #2 best Toronto condo in terms of the corp, like how healthy their reserve fund is, how much of a surplus they have in their operational budget, its legal status, clean legal sheet, no lawsuits, no claims, no nothing. So on the corp side is very nice and very clean, right to my left. And once again, concierge here is the people I have dealt with, fantastic, friendly, they know everyone by name. And then lastly, 628 Fleet, once again, really good building, just a step below 35, but really just half a step, right? It has all the good qualities. It's quiet, residential, family friendly, suitable enough for anyone such as a first-time homebuyer to a young family. You're just getting married, you're just having your first baby, your child, whatever it is, or even if you're a downsizer, it has a lot of great downsizer options. And one thing I'll say is better about 628 Fleet over 35 Bastion is probably its floor plans are a little bit better, but it's not as if 35 Bastion you have bad floor plans. You have a lot of good floor plans, but the 2 bedrooms here, the 2+1s, are generally better. Now, with 628 Fleet, you do have a lot of the 2 bedrooms that are facing the corridor, like where the garbage pickup is, so they might be on the darker side. You don't have that as much with 35 Bastion. And lastly, once again, just based on my experience alone, the only thing that leaves me a little wanting, it's in terms of its concierge and the front desk. Sometimes it gets a little too hectic for these guys, which I understand. Sometimes they might be understaffed and not rude or incompetent or anything, but you might be waiting for a bit sometimes.